Welcome to the Morning Meditation Podcast with your host, Joe Consford. Brought to you by HardwareOnTheSquare.com.
The sacrifice of Isaac. Hebrews chapter 11, verses 17 through 19. By faith, Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, according that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. Genesis 22 is the chapter that records the events that we will examine. These verses in the book of Hebrews add to the Old Testament with some more information. Let's look at God's gift to Abraham. God has already saved Abram and changed his name to Abraham, the father of a multitude. Sarah suggested that since she couldn't have a child, that Abraham take Sarah's bondmaid and have a child by her. Abraham agreed to this, and Ishmael was born. Hagar was a humble and loyal little Egyptian girl until she bore Abraham a son. But things started going bad about this time. She was filled with pride and gave Sarah a very hard time. This happens many times when one gets an advantage over another. Sometimes it is the person who works beside you and gets a promotion to a place of authority. He no longer treats you as an equal. But God had no intentions of making Ishmael the fulfillment of the promised seed. Genesis 21 verses 1 through 3. And the Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. For Sarah conceived, and bare Abraham a son in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of his son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. God instructed Abraham to send Hagar away with her son, because God had determined that in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Next, God asked Abraham to give Isaac back. Abraham's gift of Isaac back to God would be in the form of a burnt offering. Now that was a shocker to Abraham. I cannot imagine how Abraham must have felt when God asked him to do this. We do not find Abraham arguing with God. There seems to be no reluctance at all. But we are told that God did tempt Abraham. We are told in James 1:13, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. So this was not a temptation in the sense that James is talking about. The Hebrew word tempt translates and means to test, try, prove, put to the proof, or test. John Gill comments, not to sin, as Satan does, for God tempts no man, nor can he be tempted in this sense. And had Abraham slain his son, it would have been no sin in him, it being by the order of God, who is the Lord of life and the sovereign disposer of it. But he tempted him, that is, he tried him to prove him and to know his faith in him, his fear of him, his love to him, and cheerful obedience to the commands, not in order to know these himself, which he was not ignorant of, but to make them known to others, and that Abram's faith might be strengthened yet more and more as in the issue it was. The Jewish writers observe that Abraham was tempted 10 times, and that this was the 10th and last temptation. 1 Corinthians 10:13. There hath no temptation taken you, but such is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able, but will with the temptation also make a way of escape, that ye may be able to bear it. I cannot imagine a more severe trial. But Abraham stood the test, and before he actually buried the knife in Isaac his son, the angel of the Lord stopped him. And then we see the substitute. Genesis 22 verses 12 and 13. And he said, Lay not thy hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. The ram was caught by his horns in the bush to keep him without spot as a burnt offering to the Lord. The ram would be sacrificed in the place of Isaac. It was his substitute. What kind of faith did Abraham have? God had promised that through Isaac his seed would be called. This means that Abraham believed that God would raise him from the dead. There is no doubt that Abraham believed this. We have a substitute. His name is Jesus. He is the only begotten Son of the living God. He came to earth to be our substitute. Only those who believe this will be saved. We, as Christians, believe that he was raised from the dead after 3 days and 3 nights. Romans 10:9. That if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. May the Lord bless these words to our hearts today.
Join us each day as we meditate on the Word together. Be sure to subscribe and leave an objective review on your favorite podcast player app. You can always find us on the web at hardwareonthesquare.com/podcast.